Good morning, ladies. Here we are again talking about the attributes of God, looking through the book None Like Him, written by author Jen Wilkin. And today we are specifically talking about chapter 6, God being an immutable God. I thought Jen did a wonderful job throughout the chapter to talk about something rather difficult and hard to comprehend. Trying to understand a God that is unwavering in the midst of our own shortcomings. We waver constantly based on the mood of how we get up, and sometimes even then, the mood can change within the hour several times over. So trying to comprehend a God that does not change. Really, again, just goes back to that mind-blowing emoji. It's unfathomable, really. But I thought that Jen did a really nice job. God being an unchangeable God, a God that does not waver. One of the things that was hard for me to understand in this chapter was the difference, or if there was a difference between the word faithful and the word immutable. And so I went ahead and looked those two things up, and they just kind of ran into each other constantly, and I wasn't sure if there was a difference. And so this is what was concluded. The word faithful, when we're talking about particularly like a verse that's talking about great is thy faithfulness, we're talking about a Greek word called pistos. Okay, and so it's derived that first part of the Greek word pist actually has the idea of being persuaded. And so it's this idea of persuading somebody to have confidence. Typically, you're persuading them to have confidence in you. I want you to have confidence in me. And that's typically what the persuasion is. And it's this wanting to be seen and relied upon as being honest. And so that's what faithful means. It's derived from that word, and it is to be persuaded of what is trustworthy. And that trustworthy, again, just being relied upon as honest. And so this is a causing of someone to do something through reasoning or argument, and it's especially after a sustained effort. It's a convincing. So let me describe it this way. I have always I don't know why this has always stuck out to me, but anytime anybody has tried to convince me of something with their words, say for instance, I am a phenomenal judge of character. Or if someone has to describe themselves to me kind of over, above, and beyond, I am a tremendous athlete, or I am really, really good with music. Anytime anybody has to go so far as to describe that to me, I've always found it ironic that in most cases, the things that they have expressed about themselves are actually not true. People that declare themselves as observant are missing absolutely everything around them. People that declare themselves as fabulous judges of character have absolutely horrid people surrounding them. I don't know why. That seems to be what I have seen in this world. I don't know if that's true for you, but that seems to be the irony of what happens in my transactions with people. So when people have to go so far as to verbally express something about themselves, I immediately am suspicious. If you have to go so far as to tell me verbally, does that mean I couldn't be convinced otherwise based on how you live? But when someone is constant, when someone makes the same predictable decision, no matter what is going on in their circumstance, that's the person that you can see, aha, you know what? That person is a really good judge of character. Or, aha, that person is very observant. Or, that person I can see is a very compassionate person. How do I know that? Because they told me? No, because I've seen it time and time again. That's the word faithfulness. You see, God is a constant, immutable God. So let's look at immutable. Immutable is a steadfastness. This is where we get the idea of God being a rock. It's a firmness. It's resolutely or dutifully firm. This is that idea of unwavering. It is constant. So God being an immutable God, a steadfast God, a firm God, an unwavering God, we see that time and time again. And that is why we can declare him faithful. I feel like I'm splitting hairs with those two terms, but if you were following that illustration, there is just a slight variance between the two. God's immutability is what makes him faithful, because he will always do the same thing no matter what. He is consistent. He is constant. Those things will always hold true. And so that faithfulness then is what we are persuaded. We are persuaded that God is trustworthy. He is able to be relied upon as someone as being honest. After a sustained effort, he has convinced us with reasoning or argument sometimes that he is who he says he is. That's faithfulness, born out of the fact that he is an immutable God. Hopefully that doesn't muddy the waters for you. Hopefully that gives you a better understanding of who God is. This is what I found in another book that deals with the attributes of God. In fact, Jen Wilkin referenced it, I think early on in the book, maybe in the introduction, but this one in particular is written by Arthur Pink, and he has a chapter on the immutability of God, and where my mind started kind of asking the question and trying to do a little bit more research is that then he has another chapter called the faithfulness of God, and that's kind of where I developed that question, aren't those the same? So then that's where I derived my answer. But one of the things that he says about the immutability of God is this, very great. God's nature and being are infinite. Going back to what Jen solidified there right from the start, that God has no boundary. And so he is subject to no mutations. There never was a time when he was not. There never will come a time when he shall cease to be. God has neither evolved, grown, nor improved. All that he is today, he has ever been and ever will be. He cannot change for the better, for he is already perfect. And being perfect, he cannot change for the worse. Altogether unaffected by anything outside himself, improvement or deterioration is impossible. He is perpetually the same. I love that, don't you? He cannot change for the better, for he is already perfect. And being perfect, he cannot change for the worse. Coming from a human perspective, we do this all the time. Moment to moment, we change what we think is for the better or what we think is for the worse. Not so with God. Here's what's interesting about man in comparison. Jen drew this out some too. And then here Arthur Pink is doing the same. One of two things causes a man to change his mind and reverse his plans. All right? We know that it is a woman's prerogative to change her mind. One of two things that causes her to change her mind and reverse her plans. Here they are. You ready? A want of foresight to anticipate everything. The idea that, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. There is no ability to be so ready for anything, that you could prevent anything negative from happening. There's no ability to do that. So one of the reasons that a man changes his mind and reverses his plans is because of the lack of foresight to anticipate everything. Second, the lack of power to execute the plan. It's a great idea. Sometimes we may call this youthful idealism. That's a solid plan. We do not have the tools and the equipment to get that to happen. We do not have the power to make that so. So one of two things causes a man to change his mind and reverse his plan: a want of foresight to anticipate everything, or the lack of power to execute them. But as God is both omniscient, which means knowing everything, and omnipotent, which means strong enough, and we're going to study both of those in weeks to come, there is never any need for him to revise his decrees. There's no need to amend anything. He doesn't have to go back and review it. He doesn't have to reevaluate it, because there is no change. Nothing catches him off guard. He knows how to anticipate everything. He's got that foresight, and he has the power to execute all of it. It's amazing. That blows my mind. Really does blow my mind. So, talking about God's faithfulness then, that's God's immutability. Because he never changes, because he is constant, because he is firm, because he is steadfast, we can rely on him to always do the same thing. That is faithfulness. Here's something that Arthur Pink drew out on his chapter, The Faithfulness of God, that I thought would be very challenging. It was very challenging for me. I hope it's challenging for you. We've been asking this question each week: how should this particular attribute of God change the way I live, or change the way I think, change how I am on the inside, how I respond, or how I behave? Here's some food for thought for us in that regard. Okay, he's talking about, just to give you a preface here, he's talking about the faithfulness of God. I love this language that is used in 2 Timothy 1:12. Arthur Pink uses this as a reference, and it's exactly what we're talking about in our definition. I know whom I have believed and am persuaded. That's that idea, that persuasion that someone is trustworthy. He's faithful. That's faithfulness. I am persuaded that he is able to keep that which I have committed unto him against that day. Here is the challenge. The apprehension, or the hesitation to receive this truth, the apprehension of this blessed truth will preserve us from worry. The apprehension of this blessed truth will preserve us from worry. To be full of care, to view our situation with dark forebodings, or to anticipate the morrow with sad anxiety, is to reflect poorly upon the faithfulness of God. He who has cared for his child through all the years will not forsake him in old age. He who has heard your prayers in the past will not refuse to supply your need in the present emergency. Rest on Job chapter 5, verse 19. He shall deliver thee in 6 troubles, yea, in 7 there shall no evil touch thee. That was particularly to Job. The apprehension of this blessed truth will check our murmurings. The Lord knows what is best for each one of us. And one effect of resting on this truth will be the silencing of our petulant complainings. Does that get you like it got me? God is greatly honored when, under trial and chastening, we have good thoughts of him. We vindicate his wisdom and justice, and we recognize his love in his very rebukes. Phew, that's heavy. understanding this blessed truth of God's immutability that makes him a faithful God will keep us from worry, and it'll keep our mouths shut from murmuring. Lastly, the apprehension of this blessed truth will beget increasing confidence in God. Wherefore, let them that suffer according to the will of God commit the keeping of their souls to him in well-doing, as unto a faithful Creator. 1 Peter chapter 4:19. When we trustfully resign ourselves and all our affairs into God's hands, fully persuaded of his love and faithfulness, the sooner shall we be satisfied with his providences and realize that he doeth all things well. Is that not a phenomenal challenge? To recognize God as a God that is firm, steadfast, unwavering. That because he does the same thing all the time, he is faithful. We can be reasoned, it can be persuaded, we can rely on him as honest. We can be convinced that he is a faithful and good God. And born out of that, then, we would refrain from worry. We would keep our mouths from murmuring, and that we would gain confidence in God each and every day. This one has been a big challenge for me. I do not do this well. I am so changing, and I need to be in constant reminder of how my God never changes, and that attribute is worthy to be praised, and that I should have a heart of thanksgiving for how that attribute specifically blesses me as the believer. I hope you're encouraged with that today, ladies. I know I was. I hope you're also challenged. I know I was.